What we saw in those mountains, the Pentagon made us sign papers swearing we'd never speak about it. But after what happened to Martinez, I can't stay silent anymore. Before we dive into this disturbing account, if you enjoy deep dives into the unexplained and mysterious true stories, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It helps us bring you more content like this. Now, let's begin. My name is irrelevant now. What matters is what I saw during my third deployment to Afghanistan in 2012. I was a staff sergeant with the 75th Ranger Regiment, and I'd seen my share of combat. Helmand Province, Kandahar, places where the dust gets into your lungs and stays there, where every shadow could be your last. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what we encountered in the Hindu Kush Mountains that October. It started with a missing patrol. We were operating out of FOB Shank in Logar Province when the call came through. A 12-man Special Forces team had gone dark during a reconnaissance mission near the Nuristan border. No radio contact, no emergency beacon, just silence. In that part of Afghanistan, silence usually means one thing. But this was different. The brass was panicked. I could hear it in Major Holloway's voice during the briefing, see it in the way his hands shook when he pointed at the topographical map spread across the plywood table. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice tight, "this is a Priority 1 recovery mission. The missing team was investigating reports of insurgent activity in this valley." His finger traced a narrow gorge between two peaks, barely a thin line on the map. "Their last transmission was unusual." "Unusual how, sir?" I asked. Holloway looked at me, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Raw, unfiltered fear. They reported encountering a hostile force, but the description didn't match any known Taliban or Al-Qaeda cells. He paused, choosing his words carefully. They said the hostiles were significantly larger than normal combatants. The room went quiet. Outside, I could hear the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of Chinook rotors spinning up. "How much larger, sir?" Martinez asked. He was sitting next to me, his boyish face still smooth despite 2 tours. Kid from El Paso who wanted to be a teacher when he got out. His voice had an edge to it, like he already knew the answer would be bad. Holloway didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled out a laptop, turned it around. The screen showed a grainy thermal image, the kind you get from a Predator drone flying at 15,000 feet. At first, it looked like standard heat signatures. Then he zoomed in, and my stomach dropped. This was captured by an MQ-9 Reaper conducting overwatch for the missing patrol. The timestamp is from their last known position, approximately 20 minutes before they went silent. The thermal image showed human-shaped signatures moving through the valley, but among them, towering over the others like adults among children, were 3 massive figures. And I mean massive. If the scale was accurate, and thermal imaging doesn't lie, these things stood at least 12, maybe 15 feet tall. "Jesus Christ!" someone whispered behind me. "That's not all," Holloway continued. He clicked to the next image. This one was zoomed in even tighter on one of the large signatures. You could make out arms, legs, a head, but the proportions were all wrong. The shoulders were too broad, the limbs too thick, and there was something else. The heat signature was different from normal humans, cooler somehow, like these things had a lower body temperature. "We don't know what we're dealing with," Holloway admitted, and that admission from a man who'd fought in Desert Storm and Iraq told me everything I needed to know. "Your mission is simple. Locate the missing team, extract them if possible, recover remains and equipment if not. You'll have drone support and QRF on standby. But gentlemen," he looked at each of us in turn, "whatever you encounter out there, you engage only if absolutely necessary. Command wants this contained. Quietly." That word contained sent a chill through me. In military speak, that usually meant witness elimination.
We loaded into the Chinook at 0400 hours. 6 of us, me, Martinez, Corporal Jennings, our medic, Private First Class Williams, radio operator, Sergeant Davis, heavy weapons, and Lieutenant Foster, fresh out of West Point with something to prove. The pre-dawn darkness wrapped around us like a shroud as we lifted off, the helicopter's vibrations rattling through my bones. I remember the flight vividly, the way the stars disappeared as we climbed higher into the mountains, the temperature drop that made our breath fog inside the cabin. Martinez was across from me, eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. His grandmother's rosary was wrapped around his gloved hand, the wooden beads clicking softly with each bump of turbulence. "You good?" I asked over the helmet comms. He opened his eyes, gave me a weak smile. "Just thinking about those thermal images, Sarge. What the hell could be that big?" "Probably a glitch," I said, not believing it for a second. "Atmospheric distortion, heat mirages, mountains mess with instruments all the time." "Yeah," Martinez said. "Yeah, probably." But neither of us believed it. The Chinook dropped us at a rocky LZ about 3 clicks from the last known position of the missing patrol. The moment my boots hit the ground, I felt it. A wrongness in the air, like the pressure before a thunderstorm. The mountains rose around us like the bones of some dead god, jagged and hostile. The wind carried a smell I couldn't place, something organic and old, like wet earth mixed with copper. "Spread out, standard patrol formation," Lieutenant Foster ordered, trying to sound confident. "Williams, get comms with command. Davis, you've got point with the M240. We moved up the valley as the sun began to rise, painting the snow-capped peaks in shades of pink and gold. Beautiful and terrible all at once. The terrain was brutal, loose scree that slipped under our boots, narrow paths with sheer drops on one side. Every step was calculated, every breath deliberate in the thin air. About an hour in, we found the first sign. "Sarge!" Davis called from up ahead. "Got something!" We converged on his position. He was kneeling next to a piece of equipment half buried in the rocky soil, an AN-PRC 152 radio, the kind Special Forces carried. But it wasn't just damaged, it was crushed, like someone had taken a sledgehammer to it. The metal casing was compressed into the internal components, battery acid leaking out in a greenish stain. "No way that's from a fall," Jennings said, examining it. "Something applied massive pressure directly downward." "Like what?" Foster asked. Nobody answered, because the only thing that could do that kind of damage would be something incredibly strong or incredibly heavy, or both. We pushed forward, following the trail. More equipment appeared. A tactical vest shredded like tissue paper, a rifle with the barrel bent at a 90-degree angle, a boot with the foot still inside, severed cleanly at the ankle. The blood on the rocks was dark, almost black, and the flies hadn't touched it. That detail stuck with me. In Afghanistan, flies are everywhere, on everything, but not here, not on this blood. "This is wrong," Martinez muttered beside me. "This is all wrong." Then Williams, our radio operator, stopped dead in his tracks. "Sir," he said, voice tight, "I'm picking up something on the emergency frequency." We all froze. Foster moved to Williams' position. "What kind of something?" "Can't tell. It's faint, intermittent, but it's definitely a distress beacon." He adjusted his equipment, listening intently. "Bearing 270, distance maybe half a click up the valley." "Could be survivors," Foster said, hope creeping into his voice. "Or a trap," I countered. "Taliban use captured equipment all the time." "We have to check it out," Foster decided. "That's the mission." So we went deeper. The valley narrowed as we climbed, the walls closing in until we were moving single file along a path barely 3 feet wide. The sun was directly overhead now, but somehow the temperature kept dropping. My fingers were numb inside my gloves. The wind had died completely, leaving an oppressive silence broken only by our footsteps and heavy breathing. That's when we saw the cave. It was massive, not a natural formation, I realized with growing unease, but something carved into the mountain face. The entrance was easily 30 feet high and twice as wide. the edges too straight, too precise to be erosion. Ancient symbols were etched into the stone around the opening, worn smooth by centuries, but still visible. It looked vaguely familiar, like the petroglyphs we'd seen in other parts of Afghanistan, but older, much older. "The signal's coming from inside," Williams reported, checking his equipment. "Of course it is," Davis muttered, chambering around in his M240. Lieutenant Foster made the call. "We go in. Weapons hot, night vision on. Martinez, you're on my 6. Sarge, bring up the rear. Let's move." We activated our NODs and entered the cave. The green-tinted world of night vision revealed a tunnel that sloped downward into darkness. The walls were smooth, almost polished, with more of those strange symbols carved at regular intervals. Our boots echoed in the confined space, each sound seeming to travel forever before fading. "This doesn't feel like a cave," Jennings whispered. "It feels like a tomb." He wasn't wrong. The air was different inside, thicker, heavier, with that same copper smell but stronger now. And there was something else, a low vibration I felt more than heard, like the cave itself was breathing. We descended for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. The tunnel opened into a massive chamber, and even through the night vision I could tell it was huge, cathedral-sized, with a ceiling that disappeared into shadow. And in the center of the chamber, arranged in a perfect circle, were 12 bodies. The missing Special Forces team. "Contact!" Foster shouted, unnecessarily. We all saw them. We rushed forward, tactical formation forgotten in the moment of discovery. But as we got closer, hope died in my chest. They weren't just dead, they were arranged. Each soldier was positioned sitting up, backs against each other, facing outward in a perfect circle. Their weapons were gone, their helmets removed, and their faces. God, their faces. Every one of them had the same expression. Eyes wide open, mouths stretched in silent screams, faces frozen in absolute terror. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that they'd all died simultaneously. You could tell by the way the blood had pooled, the state of rigor mortis. Whatever killed them had killed them all at once, in the exact same instant. "Jesus, Mary, Mother of God," Martinez breathed, making the sign of the cross. Jennings moved to examine the nearest body. "No visible wounds," he reported, professional training overriding his shock. "Wait, sir, look at this." We gathered around. On the dead soldier's forearm was a handprint, but not a human handprint. The fingers were too long, the palm too wide, and the print was burned into the skin, like a brand, the flesh charred black and cracked. "Check the others," Foster ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. Every body had the same mark. Left forearm, same impossible handprint, same burn pattern. That's when the emergency beacon, which had been beeping steadily from one of the bodies, suddenly went silent. Just stopped. And in that silence, we heard it. Breathing. Not our breathing. Something else. Something big. Coming from deeper in the cave. "Positions," I hissed, dropping to one knee and bringing my M4 up. The team responded instantly, forming a defensive perimeter around the bodies. We waited, every nerve on fire, watching the darkness beyond our night vision's range. The breathing got closer. Slow, measured breaths that sounded like wind through a canyon. And then we saw it. Or rather, we saw its heat signature appear at the edge of our nod's range. It was massive, easily 15 feet tall, maybe more. Bipedal, vaguely humanoid, but the proportions were all wrong. The shoulders were as wide as a car, the arms hanging down past where knees should be. And it was moving toward us with deliberate, unhurried steps that shook the cave floor. "Hold fire," Foster whispered, but I could hear the hysteria creeping into his voice. "Hold, hold." The thing stepped into our visible range,
And every tactical manual, every hour of training, every combat experience I'd ever had just evaporated from my mind. Because what I was looking at couldn't exist, shouldn't exist. It was a giant, a literal, honest-to-God giant. The night vision washed out most details, but I could see enough. Rough, weathered skin the color of old leather, hair matted with dirt and blood, both old and fresh, and a face that was almost human, but distorted, like someone had taken human features and stretched them across a too large skull. And the eyes. God, the eyes. They glowed. Even through the night vision, I could see them glowing with a dull red light, like coals in a dying fire. The giant stopped about 30 feet away, towering over us, and tilted its head, studying us, evaluating. And I realized with crystal clarity that it wasn't surprised to see us. It had been waiting. "Sir?" Davis asked, finger on his trigger. Lieutenant Foster didn't respond. He was frozen, staring up at the thing, his jaw working soundlessly. The moment stretched, fragile as glass. Then Martinez's rosary slipped from his fingers, the wooden beads clattering on the stone floor, the sound impossibly loud in the silence. The giant's head snapped toward the sound, and it smiled. I'm going to nightmares about that smile for the rest of my life, because it wasn't animal, it was knowing, intelligent, cruel.
I've been in firefights. I've had RPGs explode close enough to feel the heat. I've been ambushed in kill zones where survival is measured in seconds. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for fighting something that big, that fast, that wrong. The giant covered 30 feet in 2 strides. Davis opened up with the M240. The machine guns roared deafening in the enclosed space, tracer rounds lighting up the cave like a strobe light. I saw the bullets hit, saw them punch into the giant's torso, leaving black holes in its flesh. But it didn't slow down, didn't even flinch. "Fall back!" I screamed, grabbing Martinez by his vest and hauling him toward the tunnel. "Move, move, move!" We scattered, training taking over, years of muscle memory driving our feet. Foster and Williams went left, toward a smaller side passage. Jennings and Davis went right. Martinez and I ran straight for the main tunnel, the way we'd come in. Behind us, I heard Foster scream. Not a shout of fear or even pain, just a pure, primal scream that cut off with a wet crunch. I didn't look back, couldn't look back. We just ran. The tunnel was a nightmare, too narrow to run properly, too dark to see more than a few feet ahead. Our NODs were useless. The giant gave off so much heat it whited out our thermal imaging. We were running blind, guided only by memory and desperation. Martinez was in front of me, his breathing ragged. "Keep going," I urged. "Don't stop, don't—" Something grabbed my ankle. I went down hard, face first into the stone. Pain exploded through my nose, warm blood flooding my mouth. I rolled, bringing my rifle around, and saw it. A hand, a massive, impossible hand, reaching out from a crack in the tunnel wall that shouldn't have been big enough for anything larger than a rat. The fingers wrapped around my boot, each one thick as my forearm, and started pulling me backward. "Sarge!" Martinez spun around, dropped to one knee, and emptied half a magazine into the hand. The giant roared. The first sound it had made, a deep bass rumble that shook loose stone from the ceiling. The hand released me. I scrambled to my feet, and we ran. Behind us, the tunnel was collapsing, huge sections of rock falling away as the giant tore through the mountain itself to get to us. It wasn't following the tunnel. It was making its own path. We burst out of the cave entrance into blinding sunlight. After the darkness, it was like a flashbang going off. I stumbled, nearly went over the edge of the narrow path, caught myself at the last second. "Williams, if you can hear me, we need extraction now!" I shouted into my radio. Static. Nothing but static. "Reaper 2 actual, negative on extraction. You are ordered to maintain radio silence and proceed to alternate LZ. Acknowledge." "What?
We have men down. We need—" "Acknowledge, Sergeant." The voice was cold, authoritative. "This operation is now classified. Maintain silence or face prosecution under the National Security Act." They were abandoning us. The realization hit like a physical blow. Whatever we'd found, whatever that thing in the cave was, someone up the chain of command had decided it was more important to keep it secret than to save us. "Sarge, we gotta move!" Martinez grabbed my shoulder, pointing up the valley. The cave entrance was shaking, chunks of mountain falling away. It was coming. We ran along the narrow path, legs burning, lungs screaming for air in the thin atmosphere. Behind us, the sound of breaking stone grew louder. I risked a glance back, and immediately wished I hadn't. The giant had emerged from the cave, but not through the entrance. It had torn a new hole in the mountainside, bursting through 30 feet of solid rock like it was paper. It stood on the slope above us, silhouetted against the bright sky, its massive form impossibly large. And it wasn't alone. 2 more appeared from other caves, other holes in the mountain. They converged on our position with terrifying coordination, moving like a pack of predators who'd done this before, who'd hunted before. They're hurting us, I realized with growing horror. They're driving us somewhere. Martinez saw it too. The valley ahead narrowed into a box canyon, sheer cliffs on 3 sides, no escape. What do we do? I made a decision. Maybe the only decision I could make. We climb.
There was an outcropping about 40 feet up the cliff face, a natural shelf that looked barely wide enough for 2 men. But it was our only chance. I went first, finding handholds in the ancient stone, fingers scraping and bleeding. Martinez followed, his breathing coming in panicked gasps. We were halfway up when the first giant reached the base of the cliff. It stopped, looking up at us with those burning coal eyes, and I swear to God, it looked amused, like we were children playing a game it had already won. Then it started to climb. "Oh Jesus, oh Jesus, oh Jesus," Martinez was chanting, his knuckles white on the rock. They can climb, they can climb. Why can they climb?" I hauled myself onto the ledge, turned, grabbed Martinez's hand, and pulled him up just as the giant's fingers closed on empty air, where his legs had been. We pressed ourselves against the cliff face, weapons pointed down at the thing below us. It was close enough now that I could see details through my scope. The skin was covered in scars, hundreds of them crisscrossing its body in patterns that looked almost deliberate, like tattoos or writing. Its face was weathered, ancient, with eyes that held an intelligence that was somehow worse than if it had been mindless. And around its neck hung a string of objects that I slowly realized were teeth. Human teeth, hundreds of them. "How old do you think it is?" Martinez whispered beside me. "What?" "Look at it, Sarge. Really look. Those scars aren't from fighting. They're too organized. In the cave, those symbols, what if they've been here for thousands of years? What if they were here first?" I wanted to tell him he was crazy, that he was in shock, that we needed to focus on survival. But I couldn't, because he was right. There was something ancient about these things, something that predated the Taliban, the Soviets, the British Empire, something that had watched civilizations rise and fall from these mountains while remaining hidden, waiting. The giant below us made a sound, not a roar, but something closer to speech, guttural, deep, but with structure, with language. And from other parts of the valley, the other 2 giants responded in kind, their voices carrying across the mountains like thunder. They were communicating. And then William's voice crackled over the radio, weak and distorted. "Sarge, if you're still alive, you need to know, Command is lying. This isn't first contact. There are files, decades of reports. They've known. They've always—" Static swallowed his words, then a scream, then nothing. "We have to document this," Martinez said suddenly, pulling out his phone. "Nobody will believe us otherwise. They'll cover this up, make us disappear. But if we can get proof—" "Martinez, no! Electronic signals might—" Too late. He'd already activated the camera, started filming the giant below us. And the moment the device powered on, all 3 giants froze. Their heads snapped toward our position in perfect unison. And I swear to God, I saw something new in their eyes. Rage. The one below us roared, a sound it wasn't human. Wasn't animal, but something in between and worse than both. It surged up the cliff face with impossible speed, and I knew with absolute certainty that we had seconds to live. I grabbed Martinez. "Jump! What, Sarge? That's a 40-foot jump!" We leaped from the ledge just as the giant's hand smashed into the rock where we'd been standing. We fell, tumbled, hit a scree slope, and slid in an avalanche of loose stone. Pain exploded through my body, but I couldn't stop. Had to keep moving, had to… We hit level ground, and somehow, miraculously, my legs still worked. I hauled Martinez up, and we staggered forward. Every step, agony. Behind us, the giants were descending, but something had changed. They weren't pursuing anymore. They were returning to the caves, retreating into the mountain. Then I heard it. The high-pitched whistle that every soldier knows, that every soldier fears. "Incoming!" I tackled Martinez, covering him with my body as the world exploded. The airstrike was precision-guided. Tow missiles from an Apache gunship, I'd later learned. But there was nothing precise about the devastation. The entire valley erupted in flame and thunder. I felt the shockwave pick us up and slam us down like a giant's hand. Felt my ribs crack. Felt blood filling my lungs. When my ear stopped ringing, I lifted my head. The cave entrances were gone, collapsed under tons of rubble. Smoke and dust filled the valley, turning day to twilight. And somewhere in the chaos, I heard Martinez laughing. Hysterical, broken laughter. "They bombed him!" he gasped, blood on his lips. "They bombed their own soldiers to keep this secret! We're dead men, Sarge! We're already dead!" The extraction bird found us 3 hours later. Not the QRF we'd requested, but a black helicopter with no markings. Men in civilian clothes, no name tags, no unit patches. They loaded us on stretchers without a word, and during the flight, one of them leaned close to my ear. "You saw nothing," he said quietly. "There was no mission, no cave, no contact, just a Taliban ambush that went wrong. You understand?" I understood. We both did. We signed the papers at Bagram, accepted the story they fed us, took the promotions and the medals for a heroic action that never officially happened, and we were shipped stateside within 48 hours.
That was 3 years ago. Martinez and I kept in touch after we got out. Neither of us could hold down normal jobs. How do you go back to a 9 to 5 when you've seen what we saw, when you know what's really out there hiding in the dark places of the world? Last month, Martinez called me. 2 a.m., voice slurred with whiskey. "I need to tell someone," he said, "about what we saw. People deserve to know." I tried to talk him out of it, reminded him of the papers we signed, the threats that came with them. But he'd made up his mind, said he'd been having nightmares, seeing those eyes in every shadow, hearing it breathing in every quiet moment, said the only way to stop it was to tell the truth. They found his body 2 days later. Apparent suicide, the report said. Single gunshot wound to the head. But Martinez was left-handed, and the gun was in his right hand. And there were bruises on his left forearm, dark marks that looked almost like fingers. I'm recording this now because I know I'm next, because I've started seeing things in the mountains outside my window, shapes too large to be human moving between the trees at night, because my phone keeps cutting out, my computer crashes whenever I try to research what we saw, because I heard breathing outside my door last night, slow and measured, like wind through a canyon. Maybe this video will survive me. Maybe someone will find it and believe. Or maybe it'll just disappear, like everything else, like Foster and Williams and Davis and Jennings, like that whole Special Forces team, like the truth about what's really out there in the Hindu Kush. But I want you to know this. They're real. The giants are real. They've been there for thousands of years, living in those mountains, and our government knows. They've always known, and they'll do anything to keep that secret. So if you're military and you get orders to investigate something in those mountains, refuse. Go AWOL if you have to, because whatever they tell you, whatever mission briefing they give you, it's not worth it. It's not… The recording ends abruptly.
According to the file metadata, it was uploaded automatically to a cloud server at 3:47 a.m. When police investigated, they found an empty apartment, no signs of struggle, no body. Just an open door and, on the concrete outside, a single massive footprint burned into the ground. The case remains open but dormant. The official statement cites voluntary disappearance. The apartment has been vacant ever since. No landlord will rent it. Local residents report hearing breathing sounds from inside on quiet nights. The stories shared here are based on alleged testimonies, but their truth remains unverified. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some doors shouldn't be opened. And some secrets are kept not because they're false, but because they're too true. If you found this story compelling, leave a comment below about what you think really happened. And remember, hit that subscribe button for more unexplained military encounters and classified stories. Because the truth is out there. The question is, do you really want to find it?